The Wild West has a strange rule: it never truly sleeps. Even when the desert looks lifeless, even when the wind sounds calm, even when the sky is silent, something dangerous always breathes beneath the sand. Pain never disappears here, blood never fades, screams never die. They only hide, waiting, echoing, whispering back to life when fate returns. And that night, fate returned. The moon hung lonely over the desert. Cold wind dragged dust across endless land. Coyotes cried far away. The sky looked empty, and yet the desert was not alone. Something was moving, something broken, something bleeding, something still refusing to die. It was a girl. Her hands trembled in the sand as she crawled forward. Her knees dragged across sharp stones. Her breathing was thin. Her lips were cracked. Her arms were covered with cuts, bruises, dried blood and dirt. Pain had carved itself into her skin, into her bones, into her soul. Her name was Elena Cross, and tonight, death chased her. Her mind wasn't working properly anymore. Thoughts came like broken thunder, quick flashes, loud, then gone. She remembered a gunshot. She remembered men's laughter. She remembered someone grabbing her hair. She remembered screaming until her throat ripped. And she remembered one sentence. A sentence whispered near her ear. A sentence that wrapped itself around her fear like a snake around a throat. Don't put your hand under shoulder. The words wouldn't leave her mind. They circled. They echoed. They stabbed. She didn't know what it meant. Was it a threat, a rule, a warning, a promise, or a death sentence? Her body shook. She collapsed face first into the sand. For a second, the desert thought it finally won, that the girl was done. That it could swallow another life quietly like it had swallowed thousands before. But Elena refused. Somewhere inside her broken body, something still burned. Something stubborn, something called survival. She forced herself up again, her arms trembling violently, dragging herself forward inch by inch. Her heartbeat pounded painfully inside her chest. Every breath hurt, but quitting was not an option, because she knew one thing. If she stopped crawling, they would find her, and if they found her, they would finish what they started. The world blurred around her. She could barely see. Stars twisted above her like spinning sparks. The desert stretched forever, merciless and empty, like it wanted to remind her that no one escapes it. Then suddenly she saw something, not sand, not emptiness, not death, something alive, a ranch. A silhouette of wooden fencing against the dark horizon. A tall barn standing lonely against the wind, horses shifting quietly in the distance, and in one window, a faint glow of lantern light. Hope. The word returned to her heart, slowly, painfully, but it returned. She dragged herself closer. Another crawl, another inch, another desperate stretch of her arm. Her fingers scraped rough wood as she reached the ranch fence. She tried to stand, her legs betrayed her. Her body gave up completely. She collapsed beside the fence, motionless. Only her breathing proved she was still alive. Barely. For a moment, nothing moved. The desert waited. Then a door creaked open. Boots stepped into the dust. A tall man walked out, holding a lantern. The wind fluttered his long, worn coat. His hat shaded his face. His shoulders were broad. His presence alone felt like a battle that had ended, but memory of it still burned. His face looked like it had seen too much. Too many winters, too many fights, too many grave. This was Ryan Hale, the man the West whispered about. Some said he used to be the fastest gun alive. Some said he once killed 12 men and never blinked. Some said he wasn't a man at all, just a legend cursed to keep breathing. He walked forward slowly, the lantern light stretching across the sand until it touched her. He froze. There she was, half dead, wounded, dust-coated, bleeding, but alive. His jaw tightened. The desert had brought something to his door that night. Not an animal, not trouble, something worse. A human soul hanging by a thread. For a moment, Ryan simply looked at her. His past screamed at him to walk away. His scars warned him to stay uninvolved. His heart tried to stay cold like it had been for years, but his humanity refused. He set the lantern down. He bent to her side. He touched her face gently. Her eyelids fluttered weakly. Her lips moved. Her voice was nothing but a broken whisper. "Help me." Those two words were heavier than any bullet he had faced. Ryan didn't think anymore. He lifted her carefully into his arms. Her head rested against his chest. Her blood stained his shirt. She felt fragile like a dying memory. He carried her into his home, and at that moment, he unknowingly stepped into a war against the desert, against powerful men, against ghosts from his past. A war he didn't ask for, but could no longer avoid. Inside the ranch house, the world changed. The wind stayed outside. Silence turned gentle. Life returned slowly. Ryan laid her on the bed, cleaned her wounds, stitched cuts, wrapped bandages, gave her water slowly, carefully. Time passed quietly. The longer he stayed close to her, the clearer one truth became: whoever did this to her wasn't human. Eventually, her breathing stabilized. Her heartbeat slowed. Her body relaxed. Hours later, her eyes finally opened. She didn't see desert. She didn't see darkness. She didn't see death. She saw safety. A roof above her instead of stars. A blanket instead of sand. Warmth instead of cold wind. She blinked slowly, confused, scared, alive. Ryan sat beside her silently, watching. "You're safe here," he said calmly. "You're not dying tonight." Her throat trembled. Tears filled her eyes. But before she cried, her lips moved. She whispered that same cursed sentence, "Don't put your hand under shoulder." Her voice cracked. Ryan froze. His eyes hardened. He knew those words. Everyone in the West dreaded them. Those words belonged to Colt Brinson, the most feared outlaw in the region, a monster wearing a human skin, a shadow no one escaped. Anyone connected to Colt died. Anyone who protected Colt's enemies died worse. If Alina knew those words, it meant one thing. She had crossed him, and Colt Branson never forgave that. Ryan slowly exhaled. The quiet desert outside the house suddenly didn't feel so peaceful anymore, because now death wasn't searching the desert. Death was heading straight for his ranch, and it wouldn't knock. It would tear everything apart until it found her. The wind howled louder outside. The lantern flickered. Night grew darker, and fate whispered something the desert already knew. This story had only begun, and blood would be written in every chapter. The rancher, the rule, and the shadow of death. The night didn't rest after Alina was saved. The wind kept circling the ranch like it wanted to warn Ryan Hale that he had made a mistake. Somewhere in the desert, fate had drawn a line in the sand. On one side stood a wounded girl, on the other side, a monster who would do anything to erase her. Inside the quiet wooden house, Alina slowly tried to sit up. Her body screamed in pain, her breath trembled, her muscles shook, but fear forced her to move. Ryan immediately placed his hand on her shoulder to steady her, but suddenly she panicked and grabbed his wrist. "Don't." Her eyes widened. Her voice shook. That sentence returned, but this time she bit her lip hard and forced herself not to say it again. The rule, the warning, the curse inside her head. Ryan studied her carefully. He was a quiet man, but silence was never empty with him. His eyes were sharp, observant, almost military in attention. He didn't just see wounds, he saw stories behind wounds. "You're safe here," he repeated slowly. "Nobody's hurting you, you don't need to fear me." Elena exhaled shakily, but fear wasn't gone. It lived inside her bones, inside her heartbeat, inside every memory she carried. Her throat was dry, voice fragile. "Where am I?" "My ranch," Ryan answered. "Middle of nowhere, far from town, far from most people." He poured water in a small tin cup and carefully lifted her slightly so she could drink. She was too weak to hold it herself. The water burned down her dry throat like relief and pain mixed together. When she finished, Ryan's voice dropped lower. "Tell me who did this." Silence crawled across the room. Elena didn't answer, not at first. Because saying the truth felt like inviting death to walk through the door. But Ryan wasn't asking out of curiosity. He needed to know if danger was coming. And danger was definitely coming. Her hands nervously twisted the blanket. Her eyes stared into nothing. She wasn't just remembering, she was reliving. The desert, the men, the terror. She swallowed hard. "I heard something," she finally whispered. Ryan leaned slightly forward. "I heard something I wasn't supposed to hear, and they knew. They always know. You can't hide from them. No one hides from Colt Branson." The name hit the room like a gunshot. Ryan didn't react dramatically, but inside, everything tightened. Colt Branson, even the desert hated that name, even the wind avoided carrying it. He wasn't just an outlaw, he was power, he was violence, he was control. And worst of all, he was protected. Protected by fear, protected by silence. Protected by law, because the man who wore the sheriff's badge worked for him. Ryan said nothing for a few moments. Only the crackle of the lantern filled the space. "What did you hear?" he finally asked. Elena's breathing grew uneven. Her fingers trembled again. She was afraid even to speak the truth, because truth had cost her blood. "I worked in the sheriff's office," she whispered, "cleaning, delivering papers. Doing nothing important, at least that's what they thought." Ryan narrowed his eyes. "And one night I went back because I forgot something. The office was dark. I thought it was empty. It wasn't." Tears filled her eyes. "I heard the sheriff speaking quietly, and Colt was there. I heard them planning something, something horrible, something big." Ryan said nothing. He just let her continue. They were planning to take the town treasury, but not just rob it. They were going to burn the evidence, burn records, burn people if they had to. Anyone who resisted would just disappear, like so many already had. Her voice cracked. "And then they said something about witnesses, that witnesses don't live. That people don't remember dead voices." She slowly closed her eyes. "And then they stopped talking." Her breathing went shallow. "Because they heard me breathe." Fear shook her shoulders. "I ran, I didn't think, I didn't breathe, I didn't look back. I just ran, but they were already behind me. They caught me outside of town, beat me, dragged me, left me half dead in the desert. And before they rode away," she swallowed hard. Colt leaned over me, grinned, and whispered. Her lips trembled. "Don't put your hand under shoulder." The sentence floated in the air again, dark, haunting. Ryan's jaw tightened. He'd heard many death threats, many cruel sayings, many outlaw jokes, But this wasn't one. This was different, different enough that it bothered even him. "What does it mean?" he asked. Elena shook her head. "I don't know." But he said it like it mattered, like he knew someday it would matter, like he knew I wouldn't die right there, but he didn't want me to survive later either. She swallowed, and he laughed. That laugh echoed inside her head again. That cold, empty, soulless laugh. Ryan stood slowly and walked to the window. He looked out into the dark desert. His expression remained controlled, but his mind was a storm. He didn't like mysteries. He didn't like riddles. And he especially didn't like Colt Branson. That sentence wasn't random. It meant something, something deadly, and whatever it meant, it wasn't finished. Outside, the night wasn't quiet anymore. Far in the desert, beyond the horizon, the sound of faint hoofbeats appeared. Very faint, very distant, but real. Ryan's hand slowly tightened near his gun belt out of instinct. He had lived too many years in danger not to recognize the sound of trouble when it started breathing. Trouble was coming. He turned back to Elena. "You need to rest," he said. "You're safe here for now. But if Colt wants you dead, he'll come." Her eyes filled with dread. "And if he finds you hiding me, he'll kill you too." Ryan gave a faint, humorless smirk. "He's welcome to try." There was no arrogance in his voice, just experience. The kind of experience that men earn through blood, scars, and grave. He covered the lantern halfway, dimming the light. The room slid into partial darkness. "You sleep," he said calmly. "I'll watch the night." Her tired eyes finally gave up. Exhaustion pulled her back into a deep, heavy, dreamless sleep. But even while sleeping, her fingers occasionally twitched, like she was reaching for life again and again. Ryan sat in silence, staring out the window, listening, thinking, waiting. Because in the WestIn, night is not just darkness. Night is a promise, and by morning that promise always gets collected. Just before dawn, the horses came. They didn't try to hide. They didn't sneak. They came loudly, boldly, confidently, because monsters do not fear knocking. They expect doors to open. Dust rose behind them as they rode closer. They were dressed in black hats and ragged coats, guns at their hips, ropes tied to their saddles, not for cattle. For people, Ryan stepped outside calmly. He didn't wake Elena. Men like these didn't deserve fear. The riders stopped near his gate. One of them smirked, chewing tobacco. "Morning, rancher." Ryan said nothing. The man continued. "We are looking for something that crawled away from us last night. Sheriff says lost property shouldn't stay lost." Ryan's expression remained unreadable. "No one crawled here," the outlaw laughed. "That's so. Sheriff says you're good at hiding things. Especially things that don't belong to you." Ryan slowly stepped closer. "You're trespassing." The man leaned forward slightly on his saddle. "And you're interfering." Silence stretched, like a rope tightening between two necks. Then a faint cough escaped from inside the house. Barely audible, but enough. The outlaw's grin widened. "So she is here." Guns lifted. The desert froze. Ryan didn't waste time. He moved first. His hand flashed. Gun roared. The sound tore the quiet morning apart. One rider dropped instantly. Another tried to aim. He fell too. Bullets cracked through air. Horses screamed. Sand exploded. The surviving men panicked. They fired wildly. Ryan fired precisely. They thought he was just a rancher. They were wrong. This was Ryan Hale, a man the West whispered about for a reason. Within seconds, the outlaws retreated in fear, dragging their wounded, leaving their dead. They didn't laugh anymore. they didn't threaten. They just ran, because they had seen something they didn't expect: resistance. And not just resistance, skill. As the dust faded and silence returned, Ryan slowly lowered his gun. The wind carried away the smell of gunpowder. The sun finally climbed over the desert horizon like a burning witness. Inside the house, Elena had heard everything. She sat trembling, not just from fear, but from something else. Someone fought for her. Someone risked death for her. Someone didn't give her up. When Ryan walked back inside, she was staring at him with wide eyes filled with shock and gratitude. You'll be killed because of me," she whispered. Ryan shook his head slightly. "No," he replied calmly. "If someone is after you, then they're my problem now." Elena didn't know whether to cry or breathe. Outside, blood-stained sand. Inside, a new alliance was born, not spoken, not chosen, but forged by danger. And somewhere far beyond the desert, when the fleeing riders reached their master, they whispered the worst news possible: she's alive, and Ryan Hale is protecting her. Colt Branson didn't smile this time. He didn't laugh. He simply stood, slowly put on his hat, and said one thing: "Then burn the ranch." And the West knew something terrible was coming, something worse than bullets, worse than fear, worse than death. Because when Colt Branson rode personally, nobody slept. Not even the desert. The sheriff, the town, and the man even the law feared. The bodies were still cooling in the sand when the sun finally climbed high over Ryan's ranch. 3 dead riders lay half-covered in dust near the fence. Carrion birds had already begun circling above, waiting for the courage to land. Their horses had run off in all directions, disappearing into the endless tan of the desert. Ryan Hale stood quietly by the porch, eyes narrowed against the harsh light, watching the horizon. He knew what was coming. Killing a few of Colt Branson's men wasn't courage, it was a declaration. And Colt always answered declarations. From inside the house, Elena watched him through a small, cracked window. She saw the way he stood, still but alert, shoulders tense, hand never too far from the gun at his side. He looked like a man used to being outnumbered, a man who expected the worst as calmly as other men expected sunrise. She wrapped the blanket tighter around herself, wincing as her bandaged ribs protested. Guilt pressed on her chest almost as heavily as the pain. "I brought this to his door," she thought. "I carried death to his land." Every time she closed her eyes, she still saw Colt leaning over her, his shadow falling across her bleeding face, his grin cutting into her like a knife. "Don't put your hand under shoulder," he had whispered. It wasn't a normal threat. It was too strange, too specific, too sharp to be meaningless. The words had felt like a riddle thrown at her while she was dying. But why? Why say something like that and ride away? Her fingers unconsciously touched her own shoulder, feeling the bandaged flesh beneath the blanket. "Why me?" she breathed quietly. Outside, Ryan stepped down from the porch, walked to the nearest body and crouched beside it. He took no pleasure in the death. He studied the dead outlaw's face with a cold, distant expression, like a man who had seen too many corpses to be shocked anymore. He recognized the tattoo on the man's neck, a small brand burned into the skin in the shape of a crooked horseshoe. "Colt's mark, you belong to me." Ryan stood again and dragged the bodies farther out into the open desert, away from the fence. The desert took care of its own cleanup. After a while, nothing was left but bones, and then even those disappeared. He wiped his hands on his coat, turned, and saw Alina watching from the window. Their eyes met. She quickly looked away, embarrassed. Ryan came back inside a minute later, closing the door gently behind him. "You should be lying down," he said. "I've done enough lying down," she answered softly. "All it ever got me was closer to death." He studied her for a moment, then gave a slight nod, respecting the answer. She gazed at him, hesitant. "Those men, they'll tell Colt, won't they? The ones who escaped." "They already have," Ryan replied. Her heart jumped. "Then he'll come himself." Ryan's jaw flexed. "That's what worries me." The town of Blackstone, miles away from the ranch, lay the town of Blackstone, a cluster of wooden buildings, dusty streets, and tired souls pretending they didn't know how controlled they were. People walked with their heads slightly lowered, windows closed early, doors locked before sundown, not because of bandits, not because of animals, but because of one man, Sheriff Malcolm Dalton. His badge was polished, his boots were clean. His smile was sharp, and his soul was owned. He sat behind the desk in his office that morning, swirling cheap whiskey in a glass, pretending to work while truly doing nothing at all. His deputy, a nervous, thin man named Harris, burst through the door, breathless. Sheriff, we've got a situation." Dalton didn't look up immediately. He took another slow sip and let the silence drag on until it hurt. "Every day in this town is a situation, Harris. That word doesn't mean much unless guns are involved." "Guns are involved," Harris blurted. Dalton lowered the glass. "Talk." Harris swallowed, sweat already beading on his forehead. "Colt's men, 3 of them are dead, out by Ryan Hale's ranch." Dalton went very still. "And the ones who aren't dead?" he asked. "They rode back to Colt. Sir, they say Hale shot them down like they were nothing." The sheriff leaned back in his chair slowly, fingers tapping the desk. Of all the people in this dying land, there was one man he didn't want to provoke. Colt Branson was one, Ryan Hale was the other. "Of course it's him," Dalton muttered. "No one else in this desert can still shoot straight." He sighed, set the glass down and stood. "Harris, get the horse ready." Are we going after Ryan?" Harris asked nervously. Dalton gave him a look that immediately killed that idea. "No, we are going to the saloon." "The saloon? That's where Colt will be," Dalton said darkly. "And I'd rather talk to that devil before he decides to set the whole desert on fire." The devil in the saloon, the Dry Creek Saloon, was always busy. Cowboys, miners, ranch hands, they all came for the same things. Liquor strong enough to make them forget, gambling crooked enough to make them lose, and women desperate enough to smile anyway. But that morning, the air inside the saloon was unusually cold, because Colt Branson was there. He sat at a table in the back, coat thrown over his chair, boots crossed casually on the wood, hat low over his eyes. A bottle sat half empty beside him. The men around him laughed a little too loudly, as if trying to impress him. But no one sat too close. Even those who pretended to like him kept their bodies angled away, as if he were a fire that might suddenly flare. Sheriff Dalton walked in, tipping his hat to a few people, pretending not to notice how everyone avoided his eyes. He spotted Colt instantly. Colt didn't stand, didn't offer a seat, didn't greet him. Dalton walked up to the table anyway. "Colt." Colt's eyes lifted lazily, cold and amused. "Sheriff, you sent your men to Ryan Hale's ranch this morning," Dalton said. "That I did," Colt replied. "I wanted something back that belongs to me." Dalton stiffened. Ryan killed 3 of your men. Colt's lips twitched into a smile that never reached his eyes. Then that's 3 men I don't have to share gold with later. Dalton lowered his voice. Colt, you can't go to war with Hale, not openly. People will start asking questions. We've worked too hard to build fear. If they see a real fight, they might start remembering what courage feels like. Colt laughed quietly, the sound dry and humorless. You think I'm scared of some rancher hiding in the dirt? I think you should be careful, Dalton hissed. He's not like the others. Colt leaned forward slightly. And you're not like a real sheriff. You're my man, remember that. The girl heard us talking, yes. She knows about the treasury. She knows about the fire plan. She knows your hands are as dirty as mine. Dalton's face tightened. So what do you want from me? Colt finished his drink, set the glass down and stood slowly. I want one thing, Malcolm. He slid his hat on and looked Dalton directly in the eye. I want you to ride with me when we burn his ranch down. The sheriff swallowed. What if he gives her up? Colt smiled again, that dead, lifeless sort of smile. He won't. How can you be sure? Colt's eyes darkened. Because I've seen his type before. The kind that has nothing left to lose but still refuses to bow. Men like him don't surrender, they make a last stand. Dalton felt a cold shiver run down his spine. And when we kill him, he asked. What then? Colt's gaze turned toward the swinging saloon doors, toward the open street, the town, the desert beyond. Then everyone will remember, he said softly. They'll remember what happens when anyone thinks they can hide something from me. He walked toward the exit, boots echoing on the wooden floor. Dalton hesitated for a second, then followed. Because whatever Colt Branson wanted, the sheriff was going to help him get it. He didn't have a choice anymore. Shadows over the ranch by late afternoon, clouds began to gather slowly over the desert, thin, wispy things that didn't bring rain, only strange light and long shadows. Elena sat at the small wooden table in Ryan's house, sipping broth from a chipped bowl. Her hands still shook slightly, but she could sit up now. She could walk a few steps without collapsing. The wounds on her arms and face strung, but the pain helped her remember she was still alive. So, she said quietly, breaking the silence, was I right? Ryan glanced at her from where he stood near the window. Right about what? They went back to Colt, and Colt will come here, she said. He doesn't like loose ends, and I'm the biggest loose end he's ever had. Ryan didn't answer immediately. He had no interest in false comfort. Yeah, he finally said, he'll come. She exhaled and looked down into her bowl. I always thought I'd die in that town, she murmured. I thought if anything killed me, it would be poverty or sickness or some drunk stepping on me in the street. Not, she gestured vaguely toward the window, toward the desert and the invisible threat beyond it. Not this. Ryan leaned a shoulder against the wall. What made you stay there? He asked. In Blackstone. Elena gave a sad half-smile. Where else could I go? She asked. The desert doesn't want weak people. The ranches don't want broken ones. The mines eat men alive. The town was ugly and cruel, but at least it was something. She swallowed. And I thought, if I worked hard enough, someone would eventually see I wasn't just trash they could sweep aside. I thought maybe the law would be different, that if I worked for the sheriff, I'd be closer to safety. Her smile vanished. I was wrong. Ryan's gaze softened almost imperceptibly. I used to think that too, he said quietly, a long time ago. She frowned slightly, curious. You don't look like someone who trusted the law. I didn't, he replied. I trusted the wrong outlaw instead. She straightened a little, eyes sharpening. What happened? He looked at her for a long moment, as if weighing whether to open a door inside himself that had stayed closed for years. The last time I fought like I did this morning, he began slowly, it wasn't to protect a stranger. His voice grew quieter. It was to protect my family. A chill traced Elena's spine. He didn't need to say what happened next. The way his jaw tightened, the way his eyes momentarily drifted far away, it was enough. They were killed, she asked softly. Ryan nodded once. Wrong deal, wrong trust, wrong man. I thought I could negotiate with evil, control it, use it. A bitter smirk twisted his lips. Evil doesn't negotiate, it collects. Elena's throat tightened. I'm sorry, she whispered. He shrugged slightly. The desert doesn't care about apologies. It taught me something else instead. What? That when something truly evil puts its hand on your life, he said quietly, you don't bargain with it, you remove it. Entirely. A long silence followed. Elena slowly set the bowl down. Is that what you're going to do to Colt? She asked. Ryan looked out the window again. If he comes here, I won't have a choice. The rule repeated as evening approached. Elena tried walking from the table to the window. She moved slowly, holding onto the furniture for support, every step burning her bruised muscles. Ryan turned to stop her, but she lifted a hand slightly. I can do it, she said stubbornly. She took another step, then another. On the third, her leg suddenly buckled. She stumbled. Ryan reacted instantly, stepping forward and catching her before she fell. His hands grabbed her arms, one arm bracing her back, one hand sliding instinctively up toward her shoulder to stabilize her weight. No, she gasped, panic exploding in her chest. She shoved his wrist away with sudden desperate strength. Don't put your hand under shoulder. The words came out louder than she intended, raw, frightened, shaking. She froze, breathing hard. Ryan blinked, surprised, then carefully adjusted his grip, moving his hand lower. He eased her onto a chair. Her whole body trembled. I'm sorry, she whispered. I didn't mean to shout. I can't stand anyone touching me there. After what he said, after that night, it's like my body remembers the words even if my mind doesn't understand them. Ryan crouched in front of her, steady and quiet. You think he meant something medical? He asked. Like, don't put pressure there. Was your shoulder injured when he said it? She shook her head. He wasn't talking about my shoulder, she said softly. He was talking about something else, something I still haven't seen yet. Something he knows, and I don't. Her eyes were wide and troubled. It's like he planted a time bomb in my mind with that sentence, and I feel like, one day, if I forget it, something terrible will happen. Ryan studied her. I've seen men play mind games, he said. I've seen them say things just to make a person break inside later. Maybe it's just that, a cruel joke. Maybe, she whispered, but neither of them believed it, not fully. Riders on the horizon late that night, the horizon began to move. At first, it looked like a darker line against the already dark sky. Then it grew, shadows within shadows. A faint rumble tickled the air, then grew louder. Horses. Many of them. Ryan saw them first. He'd been on the porch again, like a watchdog that didn't know how to sleep. His hand instinctively went to his gun, not to draw, just to feel the weight of it. Elena came to the doorway, pale and wide-eyed. What is it? She asked. He didn't look back. Trouble, he said simply. The riders emerged slowly into view, black shapes cutting across the desert as if the night itself had mounted horses to come for them. Torches flickered among them, dancing like hungry flames. At the front of the group, a figure rode tall and relaxed, as if this was nothing more than a pleasant evening ride. Colt Branson. Beside him, wearing a badge that had lost its meaning, rode Sheriff Malcolm Dalton. Elena's heart crashed against her ribs. The sheriff, she whispered in disbelief. He's with him. He's not even hiding it anymore. Men like that only hide until they think they can't lose, Ryan replied. He turned to her. You stay inside, no matter what happens. No running, no offering yourself up, no bargaining. Understood, she swallowed. They'll burn your ranch for me. Then we'll try not to let them. She grabbed the edge of his sleeve, eyes shining with tears. Why? She asked. Why are you doing this for me? You don't even know me. He looked at her hand on his sleeve, then at her face. I don't need to know you, he said quietly. I just need to know what they are. He gently moved her hand away and stepped outside. The desert air hit him like a familiar enemy. The riders slowed to a halt at a distance. Colt's face was half lit by torchlight when he finally spoke. Evening, hail. Ryan tipped his hat slightly. Branson. Sheriff. Dalton shifted uncomfortably in his saddle. Ryan, he said, forcing a friendly tone, we've heard you have something or someone that doesn't belong to you. Ryan's mouth curled in a humorless smile. This ranch doesn't belong to you either, he replied. Yet here you are, Colt chuckled softly. I like you, he said. I always did. Quiet, efficient, a man who keeps his distance. That's why I never bothered you before. I respected your privacy. Looks like that changed, Ryan said. Colt's eyes hardened. It changed when something of mine crawled onto your land. His voice dropped lower. A girl, Ryan's jaw flexed. She's not a thing. Colt ignored the correction completely. She heard something she shouldn't have, he continued. She heard you and your pet sheriff, you mean? Ryan cut in. Dalton flinched. Colt tilted his head slightly. You've been listening to her, he observed. I listen to truth, Ryan said. Doesn't matter which broken mouth speaks it. The other riders shifted uncomfortably. Colt's smile returned, but thinner, sharper. I'll say this once, Hale, he said calmly. Hand over the girl and we ride away. You keep your house, your land, your life. I forget this little inconvenience ever happened. He spread his hands lightly. I don't kill you. You don't get in my way. Everyone sleeps a little longer before the world ends. Fair deal. Ryan's answer was simple. No. Something in the air snapped. Dalton hissed quietly. Ryan, don't be stupid. This isn't your fight. You're outnumbered, outgunned. Ryan's eyes didn't leave Colt's. I was outnumbered this morning too, he replied. Didn't change much. A few of Colt's men muttered angrily. One reached for his gun. Colt lifted his hand lazily, and the motion stopped them all. His eyes were on Ryan. You sure you want to do this? He asked softly. For one girl you don't know, for someone who brought my attention to your doorstep. That's loyalty she hasn't earned. It's not loyalty to her, Ryan said. It's disloyalty to you. The wind blew harder, as if trying to push them apart before something terrible happened. Colt Branson slowly took off his gloves, finger by finger. Last chance, rancher. Ryan Hale's hand hovered near his gun. No, he repeated. Colt smiled one last time. Then I'll give you a rule of my own, he said quietly. His voice carried through the desert in an eerie echo. Don't put your hand under shoulder, Hale. You might not like what you find there when this is over. Ryan frowned, just slightly, at the strange phrase. Elena, watching from the window, felt her blood run cold. The sentence again, always the same, always twisted, always half mad and half purposeful. But there was no more time for questions, because Colt dropped his hand. And the desert exploded.
The night the desert learned fear, the desert exploded. Guns roared, fire flashed, voices turned into screams, silence shattered into chaos. Colt Branson's riders fanned out in a deadly half-circle around Ryan Hale's ranch, horses rearing and dust flying like smoke from hell. Torches illuminated twisted shadows on the sand. Men shouted orders. Metal clashed. The Wild West had seen many storms, but this storm wasn't weather. This storm was war. Ryan didn't flinch. He moved with terrifying calm, gun clearing leather faster than most eyes could follow. His first shot struck the nearest rider square in the chest, knocking him backwards off his horse. Before the body even hit the ground, Ryan fired again. 1, 2, 3. 3 men fell before Colt's men realized they were already dying. The others opened fire. Bullets screamed past Ryan, splintering wood, tearing through fence posts, kicking dirt into the air. Horses panicked. The smell of gunpowder flooded the air, hot and sharp. Inside the house, Elena dropped to the floor as a bullet punched into the wall near her head. Wood shattered, dust rained, her heart hammered painfully. He's out there because of me. Her shaking hands clenched into fists. No more lying down, no more running, not again. But she stayed low, crawling across the floor toward the small back room where Ryan kept a few supplies. She had to do something, anything. Outside, Ryan ducked behind an overturned barrel as gunfire ripped the world apart. He leaned back, reloaded with practiced speed, then rolled out and fired again. 2 more riders fell. Another horse screamed as a shot tore into its flank, throwing its rider violently into the dirt. Colt watched calmly from his saddle, like a man enjoying theater. Sheriff Dalton wasn't nearly as entertained. He winced each time a gunshot cracked too close. "Colt," he shouted over the chaos, "this is insane." Colt's gaze cut toward him, cold and dangerous. "Insane is letting witnesses live," he replied. He raised his hand and pointed. "Burn it." 2 of his men dismounted, grabbed oil barrels and began splashing the ranch fencing and barn walls with it. Torches rose, flickering wild orange light. Ryan saw them. He swore under his breath. He couldn't just shoot anymore. He had to move. He sprinted from cover, bullets chasing him like angry hornets. He dove behind a wagon, rolled, popped up and fired. The first torch carrier dropped. The second turned too slow. Another shot. He fell too. Ryan ducked again as gunfire shredded the wagon. Inside the house, Alina heard the word. Burn, her blood froze. Fire, not just bullets. Fire. That meant they wanted ashes, nothing left. No trace, they weren't just killing Ryan. They wanted him erased. Her trembling hand reached the back room door. She pushed it open and stumbled inside. Ryan's world wasn't empty like people said. He wasn't a lonely ghost living in silence. There were pieces of his past everywhere, an old jacket hanging on the wall, a broken picture frame face down on a shelf, a small wooden box, and guns, 2 rifles, a shotgun, ammo. She hesitated only a second. "All right," she whispered to herself, breath shaking. "If the desert wants a fight, it's going to get one." She grabbed the shotgun, nearly dropping it from the weight. She had fired guns before, but never in a war. Her ribs burned, her arms shook, but fear wasn't alone anymore. Courage was finally standing beside it. Colt's approach outside, the battle raged. Riders reloaded. Ryan moved like lightning, never staying in one place long enough to be cornered. But even skill had limits. There were too many of them, too many guns, too many angles. He fired again. Another outlaw fell. But a bullet grazed Ryan's shoulder, spinning him sideways. He slammed into a post, breath knocked out of him. Blood soaked into his coat. He grit his teeth, forcing himself back upright. No stopping, not now. Colt watched with a dark fascination. "That's why I wanted him to surrender," he said softly to Dalton. "Killing a good fighter is always a little disappointing." "You could still stop this," Dalton muttered. Colt looked at him like he was an insect. "Why, this is beautiful." He nudged his horse forward. Bit by bit, he was approaching the ranch, approaching Ryan, approaching Alina. Alina's choice. Alina stumbled to the window, hands trembling around the shotgun. Her breath locked in her lungs when she saw Ryan stagger from the shot. For a split second, panic drowned every rational thought. He's hit, he's bleeding. He's going to fall, and then a memory snapped inside her. Ryan's voice, "You didn't bring danger." They did, and tonight they answer for it. He had chosen to stand. If he could stand for her, she could stand for him. She forced herself toward the door. Outside, fate made its most dangerous move. One outlaw had managed to creep closer during the chaos, hidden in smoke and dust. He reached the house and kicked the door open, only to freeze. Alina stood there, gun aimed, terrified but steady. "Move," he snarled, lifting his weapon. She didn't think. She fired. The shotgun roared like thunder. The outlaw slammed backward into the dirt, and suddenly Colt's men realized something. The girl wasn't weak anymore. She wasn't crawling in the desert. She wasn't begging. She was fighting. Ryan heard the shot. He turned. He saw her. For just one heartbeat, relief replaced the pain in his eyes. She was alive. She was standing. She was fire, then reality snapped back. "Elena, get back inside," he shouted, but there was no time. A shot cracked. She gasped. Her body jerked. The shotgun slipped from her hands. Ryan's heart stopped. For one frozen moment, the world was silent. Then she collapsed. The rule comes back. Ryan ran. He didn't feel his wounded shoulder. He didn't hear the bullets screaming past him. He didn't see Colt or Dalton or the riders. He saw only one thing, her. He slid to his knees beside Alina, hands trembling as he turned her gently. Blood soaked her side. Her breathing was sharp and panicked. "Stay with me," he said, voice breaking in a way even he didn't expect. "Look at me, stay awake." Her eyes fluttered. She was pale, too pale. She tried to speak, but only blood-stained breath came out. Ryan pressed his hand to the wound to slow bleeding. His other hand instinctively started to slide under her shoulder to pull her upright. Her hand shot out, weak, shaking, barely strong enough to move, but it grabbed his wrist. Her voice trembled, but it rose, and the sentence returned, "Don't put your hand under shoulder." It wasn't a whisper this time. It was desperate, begging, pleading. Ryan froze. The sentence slammed into his mind like a hammer. He finally understood, not all the way, but enough. This wasn't nonsense. This wasn't fear. This was a rule that meant life or death. He changed his grip, supporting her differently, keeping pressure on the wound but not lifting her shoulder. Her breathing stabilized, not fixed, not safe, but better than a moment before. He swallowed hard. "That's what he meant, isn't it?" Ryan whispered, realization burning cold through him. Colt hadn't threatened her. He had cursed her. He'd given her knowledge that would torture her forever because she didn't know when it mattered. Fear wrapped around that sentence like barbed wire. But in this moment, that cursed sentence saved her. "Stay with me," Ryan repeated, voice raw. "You don't die here. You don't end in dirt. Not like this." Her eyes softened. For the first time since her nightmare began, she believed him. Colt and the sheriff reached them, boots hit the dirt. Ryan turned his head slowly. Colt Branson stood just a few steps away now, hands relaxed at his sides, expression disturbingly calm. Sheriff Dalton stood a bit behind him, swallowing hard, eyes darting between Ryan and the bleeding girl. "Well," Colt said casually, "isn't this touching?" Ryan's gun hand twitched. Colt shook his head once. "Careful," he said softly. "You shoot me, my men shoot you, and then she bleeds out alone. We both know you're not going to risk that." Ryan's jaw tightened. "That line you love so much," he growled. "What does it mean? Why say it? Why torture her with it?" Colt's lips curled into that chilling smile. "Because fear that never ends is better than death." Sheriff Dalton looked at Alina with visible guilt. "She didn't deserve this," he muttered. Colt didn't even glance at him. "She existed," he replied flatly. "That was her mistake." Ryan slowly stood, placing himself between Colt and Alina's fallen body. "You're not taking her," he said. Colt tilted his head slightly. "Who said I came to take her?" he asked. Ryan stiffened. Colt's eyes flickered to Alina. "I came to watch her die." His hand moved, fast. Ryan moved faster. Their guns rose, their eyes locked. And between them, the desert held its breath, because what was coming next wasn't just gunfire. It was fate deciding sides.
The duel, the betrayal, and the truth that blades the desert held its breath. The wind stopped. The birds disappeared. Even fire seemed to burn quieter. Two men stood facing each other, Ryan Hale, Colt Branson. Between them lay a bleeding girl, and all around them a ring of men ready to kill at the slightest twitch. Sheriff Dalton shifted nervously, hands sweating, heart pounding louder than the gunfire that had echoed moments before. Ryan's voice was steady, but darker than anyone had ever heard. "You said you came to watch her die," he growled. "You're going to be disappointed." Colt smirked. "I rarely am." His hand hovered near his gun. Ryan's hovered near his. Dalton swallowed. "Colt, think. If this turns into a duel—" Colt didn't look at him, didn't blink, didn't breathe wrong. "This isn't a duel," he said softly. "This is a lesson." The torchlight flickered across his face, revealing something terrifying. He wasn't excited. He wasn't angry. He wasn't even satisfied. He was calm, like death himself had worn skin and picked up a gun out of curiosity. The girl who still refused to die on the ground behind Ryan, Elena, fought consciousness. Pain pounded in waves. Her chest burned. Blood soaked into the dirt beneath her, but she forced her eyes open. She saw Ryan standing like a wall between her and Colt, shoulders squared, gun hand ready, blood dripping from his earlier wound. He was hurt, and yet he stood taller than every armed man in the circle. Her vision blurred, her heartbeat flickered, but she stayed awake, because as long as she breathed, he had a reason to stand, and as long as he stood, she wasn't dead yet. Colt's game. Colt finally spoke again. "Tell me something, Hale," he said casually. "Why did you decide to fight for her? You didn't know her yesterday. She crawled onto your land half dead. She brought danger to your door. She ruined your quiet little life. So why?" Ryan's reply came sharp and cold. "Because you wanted her dead." A few of Colt's men shifted uneasily. Colt's smile widened slightly. "That's it?" he asked. "Not love, not mercy. Just simple defiance?" Ryan's gaze never budged. "Sometimes defiance is enough." Colt chuckled. "That's what I like about men like you." He took a slow step forward. "You remind me of something I used to believe before I learned how foolish belief is." Another step. "Back then, I thought there were two kinds of people in this world, the strong and the dead. Later I realized I was wrong." He stopped only a few feet away from Ryan. "There are actually three kinds." Ryan didn't speak. Colt continued. "There are the weak who suffer. There are the strong who survive. And then there are the ones like her." His eyes slid to Elena. "The ones who know enough to destroy both." Dalton stiffened. "What do you mean?" he demanded. Colt ignored him. "Ryan," Colt said carefully, "you think you're protecting her from me. You think she's just a witness, just a scared girl who overheard something she shouldn't have." His smile died. "She isn't." Ryan's jaw tightened. "What is she then?" Colt's eyes sharpened. "She's the reason this is happening." Silence crashed across the ranch like thunder. Even the men surrounding them hesitated. Ryan's brows twitched. "What are you talking about?" Colt gestured lazily toward Elena. "She wasn't a mistake. She didn't just accidentally hear something. She was there because she wanted to be. She wasn't some helpless cleaning girl who stumbled into danger." He leaned slightly closer. "She was the one trying to bring it." Elena's heart stuttered. Ryan glanced back at her, confusion flashing across his face for the first time. Colt smirked. "There it is, the doubt, the beginning of cracks." Dalton looked between them helplessly. "Colt, what are you saying?" Colt turned slowly toward him. "I'm saying your precious little witness is the reason the Treasury plan existed in the first place." Dalton's breath vanished. Ryan's eyes darkened. "Explain," he demanded. Colt spread his hands like a storyteller enjoying his own tale. "She wasn't just cleaning papers in the sheriff's office. She was moving them, adjusting records, quietly erasing debts, redirecting shipments. She was the one feeding me information." Elena's fingers dug into the ground. "No," she whispered weakly. "Ryan didn't move, didn't blink, didn't judge. He listened." Colt continued. "Blackstone's treasury wasn't just vulnerable by coincidence. It was vulnerable because she made it vulnerable. She was going to help me burn the records, erase everything, start again." Dalton shook his head rapidly. That's impossible. She's..." A survivor, Colt snapped. Just like me. He gestured down at Elena. Life beats you long enough, you stop trying to be a good person. You just try to be alive. Elena's breath trembled as tears welled. I didn't want anyone to die, she whispered. I didn't know what you'd do, Colt laughed sharply. You didn't want anyone to die, you were helping me. You knew exactly who I am, what happens wherever I go, and yet you still came to me because I offered you something nobody else ever did. She closed her eyes. He leaned closer. Power, her tears slipped. Ryan's chest tightened, not because of anger, but because of recognition. He had once made a deal for survival too. He knew how easily the line blurred between choosing life and choosing to become a weapon. The lie inside the truth Ryan finally spoke. You're lying. Colt tilted his head. You'd like that, wouldn't you? Ryan's gaze hardened. You're trying to break her. You're trying to break me. If she really helped you, why try to kill her? Colt smiled again. Because she changed her mind. Silence fell like a blade. Elena's lips trembled. She looked at Ryan, and the guilt in her eyes told him everything before she spoke. I did, she whispered. I helped him. I adjusted papers in the office. I erased ledgers. I made things disappear. I told myself it wasn't hurting anyone. I told myself it was just in numbers. Her tears fell faster. But then that night, when I heard everything, when I heard he didn't just want to erase money, he wanted to erase lives, I panicked. I ran. I wanted to stop it. I wanted to expose them. She swallowed painfully. And that's when they came after me. Dalton's face flushed with shame. Colt clapped slowly. Their truth, happy now? Ryan's face remained unreadable. You're still scum, he said to Colt. Colt shrugged. I've never claimed otherwise. He turned cold eyes back to Elena. But you wanted to pretend you were better. That's why this rule matters so much to you. Her breath hitched. Colt leaned forward slightly. Because the last thing I ever told you wasn't a threat. He smiled dangerously. It was a promise. The sentence echoed in the air like poison. Don't put your hand under shoulder. Ryan's mind raced. So did Elena's. So did Dalton's. Suddenly, Colt's meaning wasn't just cryptic anymore. It was personal, targeted, important. Ryan's voice was deadly calm. What does it mean? Colt exhaled patiently. It means exactly what it sounds like, he said. Sooner or later, someone you care about is going to bleed. Instinct will make you grab them there, lift them, hold them, comfort them, and you'll kill them while trying to save them. Dalton blinked. Ryan froze. Elena stared. Colt smiled thinly. I wanted you to live long enough to carry that fear with you. Every time someone you cared about got hurt, you'd remember me, you'd hesitate, you'd doubt. And maybe, just maybe, that hesitation would cost a life I'd never need to shoot. Ryan realized the brilliance, the cruelty, the psychological violence. Colt wasn't trying to kill bodies anymore. He was trying to kill trust. Kill instinct, kill love, by turning help into danger, by turning caring into risk. Elena stared at him with tears shaking in her eyes. You wanted to break me forever? Yes, Colt said softly. Because broken people don't fight back. Ryan's grip tightened on his gun. And yet she did, he said. She ran, she fought, she survived, she warned me, she still didn't help you. Colt's smile faded. And that is why she dies now. He drew fast, so did Ryan, even faster. A single gunshot ripped the night apart. Time shattered into slow motion. Dalton shouted something. Colt's eyes widened. Ryan's stance locked. Elena's world spun. Then Colt staggered backward. A red hole bloomed in his chest. He stared down, almost confused, like death was something that happened to other people, not him. He dropped to his knees. Men shouted in panic. Guns lifted. Chaos flared. Ryan fired again. One man dropped. Dalton finally snapped out of shock. "Stand down," he roared. But panic had already replaced discipline. Colt's men didn't retreat. They attacked. Gunfire thundered again. Ryan dove back toward Elena, shielding her with his body, firing with brutal precision. Each shot was final. Each movement meant survival. Dalton turned, firing at Colt's riders instead of Ryan, finally picking a side, perhaps too late, but picking it anyway. Outlaws fell, screamed, died. The desert drank greedily. Within minutes, silence. Again, just like after storms. Only this time, the storm didn't move on. It died here. The Monster Falls Colt collapsed fully onto his back, eyes staring at the stars as if trying to memorize them in his final seconds. Ryan approached slowly, gun still ready. Dalton stood nearby, chest heaving, smoke curling from his revolver. Colt's lips curved into a faint smile. "Well," he rasped, "looks like you get to be the hero, Ryan Hale." Ryan didn't smile. "This wasn't about being a hero." Colt coughed blood. "You think killing me ends anything?" His gaze flickered toward Elena again. She still has to live with what she almost became. Elena's tears didn't stop. But there was steel beneath them now. Ryan said nothing, because Colt wasn't wrong. Colt's hand twitched, then went limp. The desert finally let him go. For a moment, no one spoke. The man who had owned fear in Blackstone was gone. And just like that, the world felt bigger, heavier, quieter, but it wasn't over. Ryan turned back to Elena immediately. Her breathing was weak. Her skin was pale. She had fought death long enough tonight, but she wasn't free yet. He knelt beside her again. "Stay with me," he whispered. Her eyelids fluttered. Don't." A faint, trembling smile formed on her lips. "Put your hand under shoulder." He actually chuckled softly. "Yeah," he said. "I remember." But before he could lift her safely, he heard it. Dalton, behind him, not moving, not speaking, breathing hard, and pointing a gun at his back. The last shot, the final choice, and the law of the desert didn't celebrate Colt Branson's death. It didn't scream victory, didn't sing freedom. It simply breathed, quietly, like a beast that had fed well but wasn't done yet. Ryan Hale knelt beside Elena, blood soaking his hands, heart pounding against ribs that felt too tight for his chest. He kept pressure exactly where it needed to be, not shoulder, not instinct, not wrong. He followed the rule. Her weak, trembling breaths proved it mattered. "Stay with me," he whispered again, not a command, not a plea, a promise. Her tired eyes opened slightly. She tried to smile. "I am trying." Her voice was barely wind. But as long as it existed, she existed. Ryan leaned closer. "You're going to live," he said. "You're going to walk again. You're going to breathe without fear. You're going to see a day without guns and sand and blood." Her lips quivered. "You sound like someone who doesn't lie." "I don't," he said, "even when it hurt, even when it meant death, even when it cost everything." She believed him until a metallic click sliced through the moment, a gun cocking behind him. Ryan didn't turn immediately, didn't jerk, didn't react. He simply closed his eyes for half a second, not fear, not shock, more like disappointment, because he already knew who it was. Sheriff Malcolm Dalton. The man who had worn a badge like a lie. The man who had served Colt while pretending to serve law. The man who had destroyed his town long before Colt ever did. "Stand up, slowly," Dalton said. His voice shook, not with fear. With desperation, Ryan didn't move right away. "I can't," he said calmly. "She dies if I stop holding pressure." "I said stand," Dalton snapped, then stopped himself, teeth grinding as he fought his own panic. He swallowed, then spoke through clenched teeth. "You have 5 seconds to stand up. If you don't, I will shoot you in the back." Elena's eyes widened. "No, quiet," Dalton barked at her, voice cracking under guilt and rage. Ryan didn't flinch. "Malcolm," he said slowly, "this ends here. Colt is gone. His gang is gone. No one fears you anymore. You don't have to do this." Dalton laughed bitterly. "Don't have to, Ryan, I already did, long before this night. Long before you came back into my life like a ghost wearing rage." His voice grew sharper, more frantic. "If she lives, she talks. If she talks, I hang. I lose everything. My badge, my life, my existence. Blackstone will tear me apart." He raised the gun higher. "So I finish what Colt started. One bullet and the desert buries the truth with her." Elena blinked tears. "I never wanted you dead," she whispered. Dalton's eyes softened for a split heartbeat, then hardened 10 times worse. "That's the problem," he said quietly. "Good people never want anyone dead, and that's why the bad ones live longer." Ryan exhaled slowly. "Malcolm," he said again, voice steady, "if you shoot, I will kill you." Dalton chuckled emptily. "You won't. You're trying to be better than the desert again." Ryan's jaw tightened. "I'm trying to stop it from claiming another soul that could choose differently." Silence, a long one, the kind that only happens when fate waits to hear a decision. Dalton's hand trembled, but not downward, upward, stronger. He locked the hammer fully. "Move away from her," he whispered. Ryan didn't. For the first time, his voice shook. "Malcolm, please." The sheriff froze. He had never heard Ryan Hale ask anyone for anything, ever. That hesitation saved lives once, killed lives other times. Which would it be now? The sheriff breathed in. Then he pulled the trigger. The shot that didn't belong to him, but the shot that echoed, didn't come from Dalton. Dalton jerked, eyes wide, as blood burst from his side. He collapsed with a scream, gun falling from his hand, rolling away uselessly. Behind him, smoke curled from a shaking revolver. Ryan turned his head. He didn't expect this. He truly didn't. It wasn't a deputy. Wasn't some hidden survivor. Wasn't luck. It was Elena. She had used the last strength in her body, crawled fingertips across dirt inches by inches, until they wrapped around a fallen outlaw's gun. She could barely hold it, barely aim, barely breathe, but she aimed enough. Ryan stared at her, eyes full of shock, and something deeper, respect. Dalton writhed on the ground, clutching his wound and cursing between clenched teeth. "You shot me," her chest heaved. Her voice shook, but it was no longer helpless. "I warned you," she whispered. "I am done letting men decide whether I deserve to live." Dalton coughed blood. His strength fled fast, and with it his defiance. Instead of rage, regret finally replaced it. He looked at Ryan. "You always had a way of standing where people weren't supposed to," he muttered weakly. Ryan stared at him without triumph, without vengeance, only truth. "You could have been better," Ryan said quietly. Dalton swallowed hard. "I could have been a lot of things." Then he laughed softly, bitter until the last breath. "But law was never one of them." He collapsed. The sheriff of Blackstone died under the sky he'd lied under for years. And suddenly, there were no more monsters left to fear, just wounds to treat and lives to choose. Don't put your hand under shoulder. The final meaning. Ryan turned back to Elena immediately. Her breathing was shallow, her eyelids heavy. He worked fast. Clean cloth, firm pressure, correct angle, calm hands masking frantic heart. But there was something else in his movements now. Care, more than duty, more than obligation, something human. Stay awake, he said firmly. Look at me, right at me, she tried. Tears slipped sideways into her hair. I thought I was finished, she whispered. I thought I was nothing but damage. I thought if someone like Colt offered me strength, it meant I never deserved real kindness again. Ryan shook his head gently. You made mistakes, she laughed weakly. That's generous. You also changed your mind, he said. That matters more. Her throat tightened. I didn't save you because I was brave, she whispered. I saved you because I remembered something. He leaned closer. What? A faint, tired smile appeared. That just because someone tells you a rule doesn't mean it belongs to them. Her eyes softened with realization and clarity that wasn't there before. Don't put your hand under shoulder. Colt used it to break me, to scare me, to control me, to make me afraid to touch people I care about. Ryan nodded softly. And tonight, she said slowly, it stopped being his rule. It became theirs, a life-saving truth, a lesson of care, a message of survival, a promise never to harm while healing. Ryan swallowed. The rule that once felt like a curse had become protection, had become wisdom, had become hope. The last chain Colt tried to wrap around her mind snapped, and she wasn't afraid anymore. The desert lets them live. Ryan carried her carefully, correctly into the house. This time when he touched her, she didn't flinch in terror. She trusted. He worked through the night, bandaging, stitching, holding, watching, not under shoulder. Not where instinct would make mistakes, where knowledge would save. The desert outside stayed quiet. For once, it didn't demand another sacrifice. By sunrise, her breathing steadied. Her color returned. She slept peacefully for the first time in too many memories. Ryan finally allowed himself to sit, then breathe, then exhale a weight he had carried far too long. A new dawn when Elena woke. Sunlight warmed the room. Morning birds chirped faintly outside. Horses snorted. Wind whispered gently, life. She blinked slowly. Ryan sat nearby, half dozing in a chair, exhaustion wrestling with stubborn responsibility. She smiled softly. You stayed, she whispered. He opened one eye. Wasn't going to let you wander off just to prove a point. She laughed weakly. It felt strange, warm, alive. He leaned forward slightly. You'll heal, he said. Not quickly, not easily. But you will, she nodded. And after that, what then? He shrugged slightly. That's for you to choose, not the desert, not fear, not dead men. She stared at the ceiling thoughtfully. For the first time, that doesn't scare me. He stood slowly. I'll get breakfast, he said. Ryan, she called softly. He paused. Yes, she smiled. Thank you. He didn't smile, but his eyes did. He tipped his hat. Don't thank me, just live right, she nodded. I will. The legend the West remembered Blackstone changed after that night. The tyrant was gone. The liar lawman was gone. Fear didn't vanish overnight, but people began to look at the sky differently. Straighter, less small. They rebuilt with their own hands, their own courage. And whenever someone asked how Colt Branson finally died, they whispered about a girl who refused to die, a rancher who refused to surrender, and a rule that once belonged to a monster but became a promise of life. Don't put your hand under shoulder, not a threat, not a curse, not a fear anchor. A reminder, don't grab people where it hurts. Don't break what you're trying to save. Don't let fear decide how you hold someone you care about. And above all, never let evil own your instincts. The desert remembered, and for once, it remembered something good.